Hi, this is Debbie. Welcome back to Cheyenne, Wyoming Urban Gardener. And we're just going to do a little bit of an update on the plants. It's only been a few days since I put a video out, but a lot changes in just a few days. Well, one of the things that has changed is I've gotten the second garden plot. This is not the main garden, this is the second plot. I've gotten this one all fenced. You can kind of see the fence there, but I've gotten that one all fenced up all the way around. And this was a clearance fence that I picked up at Menards. This was $2.99 per piece, and each piece is about 10 feet long. So I finally found out exactly how large, at least around, this garden plot is, and it took 5 of those fence pieces, so 50 feet around. So now we know exactly how big this second garden plot is. So it's a lot bigger than I thought it was. Of course, that's around, not really just counting from, I guess, side to side or width or anything like that. But that is exactly what it is. And of course, it's straight back here at the back part that goes up to the garage, but curved around this section and lined with rocks. And, well, now at least we know exactly where the edge of the concrete is. I was pretty sure I knew, and I was pretty much right on it. So now we know exactly where all the edge of the concrete is. And corn is doing amazing. We are actually beginning to get what looks like regular corn going on. It's almost about 18 inches tall now in some sections. And with the back part is now coming up. As I reminded everyone before, it is shaded more in this back section, and right now it's getting some sun because it's in the evening, and that's when the sun hits in here. So this corn is actually looking pretty good for it being shaded. So maybe it'll come on and do something, who knows. But I did have to replant in certain areas some of the corn that just didn't seem to be coming up, and it looks like birds came in and maybe picked up some of the corn. And I noticed a starling in here, and starlings, if you're not careful, they will actually pluck corn off to the ground if it is only a few inches tall, as well as pull up the corn at times to get the corn kernel, and also dig down with their beaks into the soil to get the corn kernel. And I think that's what happened, because we had a starling out here in the yard and it was poking its nose in the ground. So that's what I did, and we went ahead and just replaced those seed. They'll be up in the next couple of days and will come on very, very quickly, because now that it's getting more towards July and we've hit the 21st of June, then that means that the days will, after about a couple more days, will start getting a little bit, tiny bit shorter than what they have been up to this point. So you know, it prompts the plants to get ready quicker. So sometimes if you plant things right about now, you'll be surprised how much growth comes on, and just an amazing amount of growth, and everything wants to try to grow and get done and go to maturity so that way it can spread its seeds. So that's what it is. And when this corn gets up to the size where it has corn on it, unless, knock on wood, we don't have a hailstorm or something like that, then we will save a couple of the ears for seed for next year's planting. Last season I saved 1 ear, and I had enough to plant the entire section. This next season coming up, I'm going to save 2 ears for the next season's planting. So, and the Royal Burgundy beans have all came up, and you can see them. They're actually pretty tall now in between the corn. And then I have the rattlesnake pole beans and Kentucky Wonders also in here, and they're doing very, very well. They're starting to come up and get established. Borage is continuing to get taller and taller and taller, and again, this is in a pot. So I've not had the borage in a pot before, but I suspect it will spread again, because seeds just kind of get everywhere, and we still are battling some of them coming up in the garden. So that is a very prolific plant. Shallots are looking absolutely beautiful, and I actually planted some lemon cucumbers in front of the shallots, because the shallots will most likely be coming up pretty soon, because they look like, to me, they're getting very, very ready. They are huge. I've not seen shallots this huge before. Stalks are enormous. So again, this was some store-bought shallots that I had found that you prepare to eat, and I just stuck them in the ground, and they're growing quite well. We've got 23 right here in this little tiny section, and I planted 10 more, which will probably spread out and make at least 3 to 4 per one that I planted. So we'll have quite a lot of shallots for us. Potatoes are doing wonderful. I noticed that my grandson's row is beginning to pick up and grow a little bit more, and a couple of them came up that had not came up when they first started. So it looks like he's going to actually have some potatoes in there. I'm not expecting as many as we have in the other 3 rows, but we'll see. We'll see how they do. But these potatoes looking awesome. There was a little space where there was a couple of potatoes that didn't come up. You can kind of see that right in there and right over there. And those have now came up. So you can see those up now, and they'll catch up to the other ones. And there's one of those invasion of borage right over there. So we still have borage growing in the garden, even though I've been trying to get it out of there. I don't think I'll plant it in the garden anymore. My eggplants are putting on new growth, getting a lot bigger. So it looks like they're going to be doing pretty good. And we're still trying to figure out what to do with all of the vine that came off of the fence. So that's still sitting here because not real sure if it goes into the compost bin or if it'll go onto the pile that we have for compost. Beans are looking great. We've got the beans here, not around corn or anything like that, on the trellises. And they're starting to get runners now, at least some of them. Even the pole beans. We've got the Japanese yard long in some sections. Then we've got the rattlesnake pole beans as well as Kentucky Wonders. Then we've got the, Provider bush beans. And we also have top crop bush beans. And we have 25 half runner plants, and all of them are getting pretty big. Some of them just now came up, and that's some of the rattlesnake pole beans that we had to replace beans that did not come up. So those are just now starting to come up, but some of them are already thinking about getting their runners on them. And the bush beans are the ones that have surprised me that they have already started trying to put runners on as if they want to run up anything. But they're bush beans and they don't really do a whole lot of running. And the half runners are just what they mean, half runners. They're not the size of like the rattlesnake pole beans, which get about up to 10 feet tall. These half runners only get to about, at the max, about 6 feet. So they're half the size, half runners, of the other beans. So, and they're a favorite in the South, and I love them. You can either let them dry and shell them, or you can eat them green. Either way, they're dual purpose and wonderful, but you do have to string them. They do have strings, and snap them. But the tomatoes are looking wonderful. Tomatillos are looking wonderful. All the peppers are looking wonderful. Everything just picking up and growing like crazy. Really starting to see and look like a garden at this point. My partner was out here just a few minutes ago, and he was saying everything is looking so green, and he said it has completely transformed from what it was last season. He said, and I thought last season was your best garden, and he said this season it's looking huge. And I said, well, that's what happens when you put a lot of compost into the garden and it sits for a while from last season. And you do a little crop rotation. I don't do a whole lot. My potatoes have been in the same place every year, so not a lot of things have changed. You don't really have to do crop rotation as long as you're taking care of your soil really well, and that's something that you can get from Charles Dowding as well. He doesn't do any crop rotation of a whole lot of things either, and you just don't need to if you're taking care of the soil. You're not disturbing it so much. I've only tilled this, as you remember, once this season, once last season, so everything's looking great. We've got so much going on. We've got the calendula is actually encroaching into the onions, so I'm going to have to get in there and pull some of those out and maybe just transplant them. I hope that it won't kill them, but maybe we can just transplant them back into where the calendula is coming up, and these are probably volunteers from last season's seeds. And I tried to get all of them out and tried to keep them headed so that way I wouldn't have that problem, but they always escape you. And we've got a couple of weeds in there we got to get pulled out. I've done a lot of weeding, but onions are difficult to do because you get those little weeds in there and they get between the onions. And I've got them planted pretty close together, so it's not real easy to step in there and do a whole lot. So that's kind of what happens. Lettuce, I did plant a little bit more lettuce in the back, in that back section behind the trellises, just because it was looking a little bare in there. So I just went ahead and planted a few more seeds, and those should be up in the next few days. I did plant another row of peas all along the trellis and between the other peas. Those should be up in the next few days. We've got actually 3 more rows that have been planted in there. And this is over here in the rose section. Roses are getting ready to bloom. You can see all the blooms in there, reds and pinks. And then we have buds on the white roses. We've got white, that's the white one, and the red one, and then we have a peach. The peach has not shown any buds as yet. It's usually a little bit later to bloom. The red one definitely is the first to bloom. The white one is usually very short amount of time to follow. And we've actually got some acorn squash that I had planted in here a couple of weeks ago is starting to come up. Got to get in there and weed some as well. I did a little weeding in here today. Planted some zinnias along the sunnier part of the garden over here, this garden plot. And then we have leeks, which are really tiny, all along in the front. They have actually tripled in size. They are getting very quick to grow. Artichokes still slow. Artichokes are always slow to grow, but they're getting, I come out here and there's 1 or 2 extra leaves. I see some growth in the middle of that one, and this one has gotten a few more leaves as well. And then we've got bachelor buttons and nasturtium and zinnias all planted back in here in 2 rows. They are starting to come up, looking great. Purple passion, asparagus hasn't came up as yet, but it's always a little bit slower to come up, but it will. And then we've got just a whole bunch of things going on in here. Got those couple of bunches of chives in here, and I'm going to go ahead and get those out of here, get those transplanted into a pot so I can contain those a little bit more. So lots going on in here. We're still battling the Virginia creeper, as I reminded everyone that even though we got it off the fence, we will still have to battle that it's on the back side of the fence, and I can't do anything about that, so it keeps coming up, and I just come out here every morning and just pull it out. Beans, the rattlesnake pole beans and Kentucky Wonders through the back section of this strip of ground are coming up. Battling bugs on those because they're up against where the Virginia creeper is. There's a lot of ants in here and things. This part of the soil had not been disturbed before. There's a lot of pests in here. We've got holes and things because there's bugs in here. And then, of course, we've got some bachelor buttons and things like that planted in here as well, and some sunflowers, which you can see the sunflowers right there. They're all coming up, doing really well, but they're suffering with a little bit of bug damage as well. And I've got 8 delicata squash staggered in here as well. Those are up and not getting any pest damage, which is surprising. You would think that they would, but no. Not anything touching them at all. They're just getting bigger and liking it over here, so they're doing great. And again, we're looking at the back side of the peas now, and some of our yellow straight neck squash and all of that. Everything is looking great throughout the garden. Just keeps getting bigger. We're actually looking at curling leaves on the cabbages, so they're curling in the center, getting ready to start putting on some heads. So you can see those in there. These are a compact variety of cabbages, so they're not going to be very big. So again, I'm going to go ahead and go into a part 2 of this so you can see everything going on in the garden. We just have so many plots. So I will see you in the part 2.